Hey, folks, in this episode of the podcast, I get to sit down with my friend, New York City-based photographer, Mr. Jesse Dittmar. We're going to be talking about his experiences shooting celebrities and Dr. Fauci. This is TWiP. Jesse, welcome to the podcast, man. How's it going out there in New York City?
A beautiful day. Fall is the best time to be in New York City, Frederick. I'm really happy to be talking to you.
This is the time of year that New York is, I think of New York as kind of a black and white city. Like when I go there, it feels like everywhere you aim your camera wants to be black and white for some reason. I don't know why, but this time of year.
It's beautiful in those tones, man. It's beautiful in the black and white tones.
I love it. Yeah, this time of year though, it's there's the changing of the seasons, a little color in there, some browns, some yellows, all that, right?
What little green there is will be turning yellow and brown.
Central Park, man. Central Park.
Yeah. Those Central Park photos are going to be happening.
How far are you from Central Park? Are you in the vicinity?
I'm down in Dumbo, so I'm right across the water from Lower Manhattan. It's a beautiful view down here. Love this space. And one of the great things about being down in Dumbo, one of the great things about New York City is that you're a quick subway ride away from most things. So I could get up to Central Park in like 30 minutes. Yeah. It's really convenient. It's a great city to get around.
So you end up in Dumbo. If you cross the Brooklyn Bridge, you're right in Dumbo. You're right in Dumbo. Yeah, because I was staying in Times Square once, and I did my little tourist walk. Walked to the Freedom Towers, and then wandered around and ended up at the Brooklyn Bridge. So I had to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge and ended up in Dumbo. Did that shot of the bridge back into the city. So.
It's a beautiful walk. I recommend anyone to take it. I mean, especially I'd recommend people to take it early on a weekend morning, because as soon as it hits like 9 o'clock, it's hard to walk on the bridge. I mean, it's so packed these days.
It was packed.
But if you get there really, really early, you not only get better light, but you also have more of an intimate experience.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I walked over there, and then I had literally had a plane to catch. So I had I called an Uber or a Lyft or whatever to come get me and take me back to the hotel, and then off to.
You were zigzagging.
I was zigzagging. I was all over the place. Well, let's dive into the topic of this episode, which is obviously it's going to sit around your core one of your core expertises, which is photographing people of note and celebrities and politicians and those ilk of people. It seems like you're on the speed dial whenever someone needs a photo set of those kinds of people. They call Jesse Dittmar in New York City. So I want to talk about that first and how you found your way into that niche of being on the speed dial for these organizations that need those photos. How did you get there? How did you go from GWC or guy with camera, if you were ever that, right, to is one of the most sought after photographers in New York? How'd you get there?
Well, everyone starts person with camera, right? Everyone starts there, no matter where you are. And so I started there too. I just started pretty young. I mean, especially since it was pretty much pre-digital. I was right on the transition there. So I started shooting when I was in my teens, and I really took to it. And then I got infatuated with the people that do this, the best people in the world that do this. At the time, it was Avedon, Annie Leibovitz. I looked at these books and I said, "Wow, how does this happen? How are these people taking these amazing pictures of people that I know are important in the world?" And so my life up until now has been a relatively straight path on figuring out how to do that. And every single step of the way was more of a confirmation that this was something I was interested in and something I really wanted to do. I went to school for photography, and then I interned and assisted these photographers, ending up assisting Annie Leibovitz and assisting like dozens and dozens of photographers that do what I do in New York City. And learned how to make it happen at that point. And I've just been really driven and focused. And I've been really focused on making my craft and really focused on being good at what I do. And preparing to be lucky, basically.
Yeah.
Eventually you get the call. If you work really hard and you push and you push and you push, someone will give you an opportunity eventually if your work is good. And then you need to prepare. You need to be prepared to capitalize on that opportunity, on that luck of someone responding to your email. Basically, that happened to me in 2014, and it's been a pretty amazing career since then.
Yeah. Who was the first? Who was the first big name that you had the opportunity to aim your camera
I
at?
photographed Idina Menzel, the Frozen and Wicked Broadway actress for the
Yeah.
Washington Post. That was one of my first first celebrity photo shoots, and then I photographed Sharon Jones, the late singer, right after that, and it kind of all of a sudden the floodgates opened. I went from quitting assisting cold turkey. My last shoot was in the White House with the Obamas, and I never assisted after. It was the fourth time I met Obama. I was like, I know how to set up a C-stand for Obama, and I quit cold turkey, deleting 90% of my income, 95% of my income in one day, and I went pretty much almost 2 years without really having a job, because I wanted to be a photographer. And then all of a sudden I was trying to get work. And all of a sudden I got asked to photograph Adina for the Post. And then I got asked to photograph Mike Myers for the Times and Sharon Jones for the Village Voice. And all of a sudden there was a bunch of different people that started to connect with what I was doing. And I had, I think it was 80 photo shoots or something in that first year.
80? 80?
Yeah. Going from
you
zero.
do realize they're allegedly only 365 days in the year, right?
I'm shooting a lot. Yeah, shooting once every four days or so.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but it was exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I got, you have to really, I think you have to be you have to be committed. What we do is so sought after. People love the idea of taking portraits, and they love the idea of taking portraits of people of note. It's something that a lot of people want to do. So you have to be completely committed. You have to be 100% committed, and it's hard to it's hard for people to really understand what that means. I think it means being a workaholic in the beginning. It means work. It's not really work for me, but it means pushing harder than you would expect. I had a great story with a really good friend of mine who turned into a really big photo agent and now works at Apple as some head of something. She's amazing, and I remember showing her my little list of outreach when I was like 22 or something, right out of college. And I was like so excited. I had these 50 people, and I reach out to them consistently, and like, these are the people I want to work with. And she looked at it and like kind of like laughed at me a little and was like, this needs to literally be 100 times bigger. This needs to be 5,000 people to 20,000 people. This is not like, you're not going to get asked to work if you're just focusing on 50 people. And that's when I realized, like, oh, this is a lot. This needs to be a lot bigger and more robust than I'm imagining. And once that happened, and I kind of scaled up my process and my goals and my understanding of what I needed to do in order to get work as a photographer, I was able to focus and get some opportunities.
Yeah, and dial it in. What does that look like on a shoot basis? I want to segue this into one of your more recent shoots with the controversial or not controversial Dr. Fauci, right?
I don't know why it's concontroversial, man. It really confuses me. But
it confuses me too. How dare you talk about science?
when those images came out, I mean, I never got more Twitter alerts, and it was just all right wing. Or I don't even know if you want to call it right wing. It was all crazy people, like, just taking my photos and memeing them. Oh. It was very strange. I was I had to turn my notifications off. I was like, what is going on here?
Really?
He's
Yeah.
just
I
a
can't
guy doing his
imagine.
job.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's what it is. Regardless of what your politics are, there's this person here that's doing their job, a medical professional who I think, and I don't want to make this a political discussion, but who I think is, when we were in the heat in the beginning of COVID, everyone's freaked out, washing your mail, and you couldn't buy Lysol in the stores. Remember all that? So, and
Absolutely.
there's one person that's saying, hey, okay, this is what we know right now, and this is what you should probably do. We're not sure, but try, and the vitriol and hate and just, talk about shooting the messenger. It was like, I was watching, this reminded me of this, game of the what is it, the House of the Dragon or whatever, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, the new show. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really
so
good.
I was watching one of the episodes, and this messenger, the messenger brings the guy, some bad news or whatever, and then he just wails on him, right? Just picks up a helmet and just wails on him for bringing him the bad news. And I was like, that's Fauci right there, right? That's Fauci is that messenger that got and continues to get, in some ways, wailed on for bringing a message, right?
For regardless of politics, what's most important to me about Fauci is that he is affecting our culture. Mm-hmm. And, regardless of the spectrum, I love people like Fauci, because when I take a picture of Fauci and I take a good portrait of Fauci, I'm going to get no middle of the road response. No, like, oh, it's either going to be that guy is the devil or that guy is awesome, and your picture is awesome or your picture is horrible. And I love those responses. I love photographing and making art that makes people want to talk and makes people want to have a conversation and gets people going. So even though I have my opinions about him, and there's a lot of gratitude, and I think overall, like, he's a pretty remarkable guy. I think that's irrelevant to my job as a portrait photographer. And if anything, I'm going into a shoot as a portrait photographer, trying not to bring those preconceived notions of who this person is. I mean, I photographed Fauci. I would photograph Trump tomorrow if I got asked to.
Right.
I'd photograph Putin tomorrow if I got asked to. I don't need to agree or disagree with someone in order to take their portrait and make art of them. So I was just excited because I knew that's my goal. My goal is to take pictures of people who are affecting our culture, affecting our world. And you couldn't ask for someone more consequential in what's been going on in the last 2 years than Dr. Fauci. So I was super excited.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I think the last time we spoke or before was you had just come off of a shoot with Roger Stone, which, again, another polarizing character for different reasons, right? And
opposite end of the spectrum,
the opposite.
I don't discriminate on who I'm taking pictures of.
You don't.
I'm really just
complete.
Yeah.
So compare and contrast there. What was the Roger Stone shoot you did in his apartment in New York?
Yeah.
Compare and contrast that shoot, your experiences from a photographer standpoint, with the Fauci shoot. Were they similar? Did you have more time on one?
Fauci was done at his home, so they both were in people's homes. I mean, both in the subjects' homes. I honestly handled them very similarly. I don't go into these shoots with too dramatic of a difference in how I'm going to. My goal is to walk away with a portrait of how I see this person, and try to also make them a person. Because what people do with Fauci and with Roger Stone is and what more specifically Roger Stone does with himself is caricaturize. I don't know if that's a word, but they make themselves caricatures, or the media does for them in Fauci's case. And I'm trying to cut through that. I think that's what is most poignant to me for both Roger Stone and Fauci is that they're both just guys. They're both like kind of the same. They're both old guys.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, when I was hanging out with Roger Stone for a few hours, I was like, this guy is weird, and something's happening here. And so there's definitely differences there. But when I've met a lot of people that are considered saintly or devilish, and when you meet them in person, you often find some sort of middle tone, and it's a lot more human, and I don't know the word. It isn't as charged as you'd expect, and I like that, and I like to get to know the person, because when I ask questions to Fauci or Roger Stone, I'm trying to get to know them in order to inform the portrait I'm going to take, and that doesn't have a whole lot to do with, what a Netflix documentary made them look like, or blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would imagine, and I don't. I've shot or photographed exactly 0 celebrities. Well, I've been photographed with them, but I've never photographed them. And I have to think that when you're on a shoot like that, much like shooting a quote normal person, it seems like you would have to find some common ground with them, to kind of break the ice and have that conversation. But then, like, if I'm just shooting some, a dude, right, or a woman, or a portrait of some sort, and you have that sort of break the ice conversation, I gotta imagine it's different with a celebrity whom they know that they're a person of note. They know that these photographs are going to tell the story about them. So there's a higher level of import on the photos than for someone just going to hang it in their office. How do you approach that? How do you approach that conversation, that break the ice piece of it with somebody, that's such a big influence on, the zeitgeist of the country or the world?
You approach it by not letting it affect you. If you go into the interaction being like, oh my God, it's Fauci, what am I going to do? He's going to feel that. And you know what's going to make him feel like a normal guy is if you're normal and treat him like a normal guy. And that's the unusual interaction for them. I think that I know that if you went into a situation photographing a celebrity and you treated them like a celebrity, like you believe that they are special in the way that you talk to them, they're gonna get that look upon their face when someone comes up to them on the street and is like, "Oh my God, I loved you in X, and will you take a selfie with me?" And they go into their little, "This is how I deal with people like this. This is the face and the mood and the look I have to get on the mood I have to get in, the embodiment I have to show in order to get through this scenario." I don't want that. I want to know what they're like when they're not like that. Yeah. And so therefore, if anything, the more famous they are, the more normal I will try to treat them. And so with Fauci, we were just talking about basketball. That was pretty much it. Basketball and grandkids, and we were talking about mortgage rates and buying houses, owning homes, and we're talking about hiking in the woods. We kept any discussion of anything that would have to do with coronavirus was very minimal. Good. I was curious about some of his work stuff. I was curious, but I didn't want to. It makes sense, you you get asked the same questions over and over and over again when you're Fauci. You get asked the same questions over and over and over again when you're Roger Stone, or said the same things. When you're any of these famous people, it's the same thing over and over and over again, because you have so many people in the world who know who you are for a specific thing, and therefore they're all kind of asking you about the same thing. And therefore, as a human, you get used to figuring out what's the best answer for that. And to me, those aren't very interesting portraits when people are in those headspaces. What's more interesting is when they're in a kind of more inquisitive and curious and focused place, which is hard for them to get to when you get into autopilot.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're saying just sort of the break the ice mode at the beginning of the shoot. That it reminds me a lot of, like, not a complete direct analogy, but in high school, right? When you're trying to date this attractive person, whatever, and the best way to not appear like everybody else is trying to date that attractive person is to not acknowledge that they're attractive and go down that road, right? Kind of like with celebrities, right? I feel like and not, of course, coming from a position of no authority, but approaching a celebrity and talking, like you said, doing the whole fan adoration thing was probably a negative. But if you approach them like a normal person, it seems like that might be more flattering to them as, hey, this person knows that I am, whatever celebrity, and I've done all this work, of course, because I'm famous, but they've acknowledged that, and they're still just sort of talking to me as a normal person about normal things. It's got to be a breath of fresh air, which I think would let them let their hair down a little bit when you do get behind the camera and start clicking.
It's far more interesting anyways. I mean, these are all classic. I mean, I feel like people talk about this stuff all the time. It's like, if you treat them like an equal, they'll treat you like they're equal. And if you treat them like you know them, like a person, like, their friends don't go, hey, Tony, I saw you on CNN last night. Like, what the hell were you talking about, or whatever? Like, they don't even talk about it. They're like, hey, how's your day? Like, did you read the paper? Like, what's beautiful weather out? You're just talking to them like a normal person.
Yeah.
And if you talk to them like you're there to do a job, and if you're confident and direct in that, you will find you get people responding in positive ways.
And I think that's the rub. We were talking about it, right? And being all kind of nonchalant and matter of fact about it. But in the moment, like, especially if it's a celebrity that you're a fan of, right? And I can take me into that world. Like, it's somebody that you've been watching since you were 12.
Harder.
Yeah. And
harder.
Then, how do you break through that and be normal with somebody who you genuinely are nervous and excited to be around?
Well, it helps that I'm there to take portraits, and that
you got something to preoccupy
I have something that needs to be done. But no doubt it's difficult. I mean, a lot of this experience it bothers me so much less than it used to. So experience helps. For someone who's inexperienced, it's practice. It's like speed dating. Go speed date. If you want to practice how to have conversations with celebrities over a 15-minute photo shoot, because that's all you're doing. You're having a conversation with someone for 15 minutes while you're taking their picture. So what are you going to talk to them about? Don't watch their movies. Don't listen to their music. Don't consume their content to influence, because who knows what they're going to be when they wake up that morning, if they're going to be in a good mood or a bad mood, or had their coffee or not, or, maybe the thing that you loved them in happened 25 years ago. I mean, I can't even remember what I did 10 days ago, regardless of 25 years ago. So, you just have to go in there and try to make yourself as blank a slate as possible, and try to be as present as possible with the person that's in front of you. That's not to say you shouldn't do your research. I do tons of research. So I have an advantage of when I go into a room with someone, I have some ideas I know of what I could talk about that they might be interested in, whether that's where they're from or what their family's like, if they're married, if they have kids, where they went to college or school, or if they're into specific sports teams or hobbies or art, or if they're interested in certain TV shows or books. If I can find out anything like that, that's great for me to know, so I know I can be prepared to be able to speak about those topics as if I'm educated in them and confident in them, which I typically am, and because I'm a generalist myself. So I'm into all those things: sports, art, movies, music, politics, general family life, things that I'm happy to talk about. So I do my research, but I'm not looking up trivia for, what Denzel Washington ate on the set of Training Day or something before I photographed him, or telling him that I loved him in X or Y or Z, because I find that saying those things to people gets them into this like fake smile, thanks a lot, let's get this conversation over with mode.
And it feels like, as a noob in that, it feels like that would be the knee-jerk reaction for a newer photographer that are starting out in that genre. Like, oh, it's a celebrity, they do this for a living. Of course they want to be acknowledged that, you think they're great. So let me shower them with adoration. Excuse me. But that's the wrong way to go, right? You want to... And then how do you...
for the most part, it's good... I definitely will sometimes say that, I really like what you do. I think you're great at whatever it is that you do. It depends. It depends on the mode. It depends on the mood. Depends on so many things. I don't go in. That's the thing. I think going in, being able to read the room is super important. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've had people tell me before someone's walked in, like, hey, this person, you should tell this person you like their stuff. And so then guess what I'm going to do? I'll do that. Okay. But I'm not going to live by any super hard and fast rules, because not every person's the same. So, I need to be there to be able to be present and be able to speak. Even thinking about people's hobbies, like, I've been photographing people that I've read are like super charitable and like super into their into their nonprofit organizations that they help. And I've been in situations. I remember this one guy specifically where I just started. It was like, I do this work for a nonprofit, and he just gave me this blank stare, like, what's a nonprofit? And you're like, all right, got to pivot off that conversation. Like, that's not going to work. So you just have to be prepared to be flexible and to meet the person that that's sitting in front of you. You just can't know what they're going to be like, even if you've seen them on TV for hundreds of hours, because they're acting, or they're, in Fauci's respect, they're doing their own job. That's might be different than who they are when they're in a room not working. Yeah. So you just have to really be flexible.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, on the pivoting to discussion about Fauci and the Fauci shoot, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that, like, you may have 15 minutes or so with a person, sometimes longer, but 15 minutes. Like, how do you get in there, break the ice, do the shoot, do all the things that you need to do to come up with an iconic image of one of these celebrities? And many of your images are iconic. How are you able to get in there? Is it research, and you go in and okay, I have a sketch of the shot that I need to nail and I only have this many minutes to do it? Or, I don't know, is it just that special Dittmar magic that you go in there and that, hey, I'm just going to do it, knock it out, have a quick chat, take some shots, and I'm going to Starbucks? Like, how do you...
You certainly have to have that attitude outwardly. Inside, I'm an insane, anxious wreck. And how we do it is through preparation. We're getting into these spaces well before our subjects. We're taking tests. We're deciding we're gonna. It's a little bit like a game plan in sport like football or basketball or something. You're like, or running through a concert or something like that. You're like, okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with this song. Then we're going to go to that song. Then we're going to do that song. It's the same thing. It's like, hey, I'm talking to my crew, my assistants, or if it's just myself, I'm talking to myself, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to start on the black background, go to the white background, go to this corner, go to that corner, ask him if he wants to run outside. If he doesn't want to do this, I'll pivot to that. I want to make sure I choose this lens. You game plan it in your head over and over and over again. You think about it and you visualize it, and you visualize what's going to happen before it happens. And then so when things are happening, it's just automatic. If you talk to any elite athlete or performer and you ask them what is one, and you start talking to them about their process, inevitably they're going to talk about envisioning what they're doing before they do it, over and over and over again. Great story of Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer who was swimming a race and his goggles broke, and so he couldn't see, and he was doing the backstroke, and he still won. And he won, and he was all mad because he couldn't see, and his coach was like, how did you know when to turn? Because he couldn't. Usually when you're doing the backstroke, you look up and you see the flags, you know when to turn. And he was like, I just counted the strokes. I knew how many strokes it was because I thought about the strokes 100,000 times before the race, and I just counted the strokes. And like, he was all mad. And it's the same thing. It's like, how do I have 15 minutes with someone? It's because I just counted the setups, and I counted the frames, and I knew that I wanted to go in and go out, and just meticulous attention to detail and preparation, so that when it happens and you're ready. And it's not more magical than that. If anything, that's the magic, is having the ability and the manicness and the OCD-ness to have the preparation in order to do it. You can't be walking into and then also come into the room and act like you're not like that, because then that makes people clam up and get weird if you're all like super hyper anxious. So you can't walk into the shoot and be like, oh, give me a second, I got to change my lens. It's going to take 90 seconds. You're like, okay, well then if it takes 90 seconds, your shoot just decreased by 10% of your time.
Right.
So that was stupid. You can't be like, oh, my card's full, I got to change my card. You're like wasting valuable seconds. So you have to be ready for all of those scenarios, and ready to know in your head what to do, when to pivot, when things go inevitably, when they go not according to plan.
Yeah. Who was it? Colin Powell was the one that I think is famous for repeating it, but that whole idea of no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, right?
Yeah.
So, as you were saying that, I was thinking of that. But then the other side of it, I've read several books on this whole idea of what you're describing is previs or pre-visualization of the thing that you're going to be doing, right? Just like think about it over, like literally put yourself in that situation and walk through the steps almost real time of, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to show up, and then I'm going to go over there, and then I'm going to do this, I'm going to say that if they do this, and just walk through it and literally practice the whole thing in your head mentally. And then when you're there, it's a little easier. Sure, there are going to be differences, but you've already practiced, so you're good to go, versus just dropping behind enemy lines and like, okay, figure it out, right?
And now that you say that, I do that with non-celebrities. I mean, I take pictures all the time of portraits of people all the time, and I try to put them into similar scenarios that I'll be in with celebrities. So again, I'm used to it, and I talk about the same stuff. I talk to. If I photographed you, Frederick, or any of the listeners, if I photographed any of them for about 30 minutes, talk about the same stuff and get them into the same zone. And that's how all these pictures feel and look consistent. Is that I'm not just waiting for. I get so nervous and punchy when I haven't had a shoot in a little while, because I'm like, I'm rusty. And so then maybe I'll just go photograph someone. I'll just ask to photograph someone. I'm going to do that next week. I'm going to photograph my friend from college that I haven't seen in a decade, just because, like I was saying, we're doing a bunch of pre-production. I don't want to go into my next shoot having not photographed in a couple of weeks. So it's all about pre-visualization. It's all about, a lot of sports, a lot of performance metaphors. It's about warming up, getting good sleep, drinking a ton of water, eating well, exercising, being in a good place mentally, trusting the people that work with you, trusting your equipment, having all of the production stuff completely locked in and down 100% so you can be creative and you're not worried about things messing up. This is stuff that goes beyond photo and that applies to anyone who wants to be successful in any sort of high stress profession or activity.
Yeah, it's so good. So much good stuff there. The other piece of that is, which you touched on before, I in my head, I'm thinking, crap, Jesse has like 15, 20 minutes in there with this celebrity. How the heck does he get in there and set everything up and get the shot and get out? But you're saying you have a significant amount of time before the talent or the subject shows up in order to get everything dialed in so that when they walk in, you can go into that pre-viz mode, right? How much time do you have, and what does that setup look like on a shoot like with Dr. Fauci?
Well, it varies. It's a part of the negotiation is negotiating how much time you can have in a space before the person walks in, and you never can be sure. I've had plenty of. I hate when celebrities walk in early, but I've had plenty of celebrities walk in early. I'd much rather than be late, and you have to just go with what you've got set up already. So it really depends. I try to get 2 hours. And I really only need, in a pinch, 20 or 30 minutes. It just really depends on some of these spaces I've never seen before. Some of these spaces I don't even know what they're going to be before I walk in. With Dr. Fauci, I did some online sleuthing to figure out what direction his house was oriented for the sun. So I knew where the sun would be when I was going to be photographing him, so I didn't have to figure that out when I got there. Yeah. I also generally wanted to see like how much trees were. I just Google Earthed and kind of sleuthed, so I had as much of because I knew they weren't going to send me pictures of his house. So I did as much research as I could to understand. Okay, it's probably going to be sunny. The weather, the 10-day weather forecast, it's sunny. We're going to be shooting around 1 p.m. The sun is going to be something that I need to block, and we're going to see it. And so therefore I can bring the right equipment and have the right mindset and have a plan for how I'm going to light it. And with Fauci, to kind of get into your exact question, is like, yeah, I think we got there like 2 hours before we started shooting, but you're in somebody's house and you can't be, this isn't a lot of times people don't really understand the level of production that I want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of bridge that gap between them thinking a photographer showing up with a camera and Dittmar showing up with a crew and a bunch of lights and all this other stuff. So even though we had 2 hours, there was a lot of like pitter pattering, and I probably was like in his house talking to him for like 20 minutes before anything really happened. And we only probably pre-lit and tested for maybe an hour, and that was great. And he also gave me more than 15 minutes. It was awesome. He was so generous with his time. I think what I like about subjects like Dr. Fauci is subjects who appreciate trying to give me the space I can to make the best work I can. And when subjects acknowledge that they're going to do their best to do that within reason, that always makes my life so much easier. And he did that, which I can't ask for really. The two things I ask for that are wish lists of mine are that and focus and presence. a combination of focus and presence, of just being present, my subject being present with me and focused on what we're doing, and hopefully giving me the space that I need. But I don't always get that. So that's where the real money is made, is trying to figure out how to manufacture that when everything's going against you.
I gotta imagine that with some celebrities, I mean, we're in the age of the attention deficit disorder, right? And people are on their phones and Twitter, and especially a celebrity. I don't know about Dr. Fauci, but I'm guessing a lot of other celebrities are like, checking Twitter and doing all the things. Do you find that as a challenge? And how do you, if you have a subject like that and it's a celebrity, how do you get around that? Is it just, you just kind of politely say, can you put your phone down or what?
I would ask them to put the phone away. It doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
God, I've done thousands of photo shoots, maybe hundreds, thousands, 1,000, 2,000 photo shoots, something like that. And maybe I've had to ask people to put their phone away like less than a handful of times.
Okay.
I think that the bigger issue is not like people looking at their phone. It's them being not understanding what they're doing in front of me.
In what way?
Often really, really big celebrities will be told one sentence, an undetermined amount of, they'll be, so like, I don't know, if I'm photographing Brad Pitt for the New York Times, someone's going to tell Brad Pitt like 2 weeks before that or a month before that or something, or whenever they first made contact, like, hey, do you want to get photographed for the New York Times? And he'll say yes or no. Or they'll say, we want you to, or we don't. And he'll be like, okay or no. And then he won't hear or think about it at all. And then the day of the shoot, perhaps right before they walk in to the room, they'll be like, okay, this is the New York Times in there. The photographer, we think his name is Jesse, and he's got 10 minutes, and go. Wow. And like, that's what you're dealing with. So the biggest challenge in those situations is like getting someone on board with what I want to accomplish, which is basically fresh news to them, even though I've been thinking about it for intensely for however long I've known about it. So that their focus and attention in getting them into the space in which I am in which I want them to operate in, is definitely a priority and more difficult than them looking at their phone. I mean, if it's only a problem with the phone, I can just tell them to put the phone away. Usually it's a bigger problem than that. It's their general attention.
And this whole interview, we've been talking about just everything but the actual photographing of the subject, right? The
Sure.
f-stop, shutter speeds, the lenses, what camera body, what lights you're bringing, how many C-stands.
That stuff needs to be automatic, Frederick. You can't.
Right.
That stuff is learned in the years between my ages of 16 and 27. When my career really started at 27. So for 11 years, it was about that.
Yeah.
11 years, it was about figuring out what cameras I like, what lenses I like, what focal lengths I like, what f-stops I like, what depths of fields I like, what speeds of film I like. What happens when I do this shoot at a 60th of a second? What happens when I do this shoot as a 250th of a second? What happens if we're outside, if we're inside, if it's early, if it's late, if it's night, if it's sunny, if it's cloudy. This is 11 years of practicing that, and me being like, I get it. Why won't someone ask me to take a picture of someone who matters? Not to say anyone who I took a picture of before 2014 doesn't matter. I took
Sure.
plenty of amazing pictures that I really value, but the craft needs, none of this is relevant without the craft. If you can't take a good picture, if you don't know how to use the lenses, if you don't know how to use the cameras, if you don't have good taste for tone and color and exposure and just visual good taste, none of this matters. It won't work. And that's harsh reality, but it's something that can be learned if you
Yeah.
practice for a decade.
Yeah, and for a decade. That's the thing that I wanted to get to. It's yeah. Of course, it's learned, but yeah, the time that it takes to internalize it and make it second nature. Because all this other complexity that we talked about before, on top of all just the foregone conclusion of you being a talented photographer, right? That's the bedrock, and then on top of that is I guess the psychological side of it, engaging with your subject, getting the shot you want, not appearing like a nervous wreck when you're in front of this person, and being courteous inside of this person's house. And what does that look like? And all the things. It seems like that's another decade on top of that to sort of internalize that.
Learning them both at the same time.
Yeah.
For me, that was one of the beautiful things about assisting. I loved assisting so much. I got to go into the same thing, into these people's homes, but not be on my shoulders if the pictures were bad. I was obviously I had to be good and helpful and help make the best pictures possible. But at the end of the day, I was able to learn so much and see what worked. And more importantly, I loved working for photographers that were bad, because I could see what wouldn't work. And I'd be like, oh man, don't do that. And that was almost as valuable as working for Annie to see what she does so well. Both were super valuable. It's a long process, and it's a process that's better started as soon as possible. And it's a process that does take both technical skill and, I don't want to say you have to be personable, because I've worked with a couple of photographers who don't say much and aren't very personable, but take amazing photographs. So it's not necessarily that you have to be likable or something like that. It's just that you have to know what your presence as a person is going to put the person you're in front of in. And so if you're going to be weird, then the pictures are probably going to be weird. But weird pictures are good. I love Chris Buck's pictures. They're great. They're weird. He's weird.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I love Chris. But you look at Chris's pictures, you look at my pictures, we're two very different people. And the same thing with Annie, and Annie is a celebrity. Her pictures look like celebrity. They define celebrity. It's because she's a celebrity too. She's able to talk to these celebrities as true peers, and doesn't have to fake it. And so then her pictures look a certain way. And so you don't have to necessarily both. Annie's notoriously prickly. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there of her not being the most personable person, but she still takes amazing pictures. So it's not necessarily like a people skills thing. It's more of an embodiment of who you are and how that's going to make your pictures look.
Yeah. The prickliness of the legendary prickliness of or alleged legendary prickliness of Annie Leibovitz is known, right? It's almost become like a thing and an archetype for photographers that have reached that level, right? Where you're the whole idea of the New York City photographer that walks into the set when all the assistants and grunts have got everything dialed in and the talent is already there, and the photographer walks in and grabs a camera, snaps a couple of shots, and then walks out, and then gets paid $5 million to do that. That is the stereotype and the myth that people are looking to attain. That whole world to me is fascinating. Just how the jobs come to you once you get the job. Like you talked about the pre-visualization and kind of planning process of getting that job nailed, and then getting there and getting everything set up, and what the assistants that and people that you have with you to do the job. Like you mentioned earlier that you may be on a job alone, you may be a solo operator, or you may have a crew with you, right? What determines that breakdown? Is it the size? Is it the budget? Like what's the determination?
Any and all of the above. the scenario.
Yeah.
You know, I'm photographing a journalist tomorrow, and we're riding around in a car, uh, and and it's for a magazine, and their budget's really low, and so it's like not only do I don't have enough space to bring someone. Now, if I was Annie and it was an ad or something, then yeah, I could pick a couple places to have some crews set up to go take some portraits in some predetermined spots.
Yeah.
But that's just not the vibe of the shoot. So being flexible, and also knowing what you need to accomplish. I'm going to have all day tomorrow to shoot. So the more time I have, the less people I need usually. Uh, if I have a really short amount of time and the visual ambitions are large, got to have a lot of people, got to have a lot of equipment to pull it off, or the pictures is going to look a certain way. I can tell when tough pictures are taken with just one or two people around, and I can tell when tough pictures are taken with the proper amount of crew. You can just tell by looking at them. So it just really depends. For me personally, I try to keep my personal work, the film work that I love to do, the close, intimate portraits, black and white that I like to take. I like that to be accessible, whether I'm there alone or whether I have a crew of 30 people, which has happened before. So I like to be able to make sure I can accomplish my personal work in a variety of different scenarios. But as far as getting a client an image that they need, then you have to start figuring out what are the necessities in order for you to be able to accomplish that.
So here's a final wrap up question here. When's the book coming out? When are you going to write a book about how to do all this stuff?
Well, if you follow me on Instagram, I often talk about my process and kind of the process. I also answer a lot of questions. I'm an open book as far as my process. No one's going to be able to take pictures just like me because there's no one who is me when I'm there. And that has so much to do with it. Just like I said, with Annie and with Chris and with every other photographer, you bring a certain, if you can embody, and every other good photographer, if you embody yourself and lean into who you are, then that will come out in your work. So then therefore your work will be unique because you are unique. But as far as books goes, I had a book that's sold out now with my first 2 years of portraits and stories behind the portraits. And I'm actually currently working on my next book, which is likely to hit in next year in 2023.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. The uniqueness of you, right? We're kind of like, I look at photographers as, we didn't even get to the whole NFT topic, but the photographers are like non-fungible talent, right? They're the NFTs because there's only one you. You and I could shoot the same thing, standing in the same spot with the same lens and the same camera body, and it's going to look completely different, right? So it
could, and especially, I think, especially when you get to a certain level, there is a level where, and when you begin shooting, or you're a young shooter or an inexperienced shooter, you're going to lean a lot on the tools and how predetermined software and hardware is going to help make the pictures you want to make look. But once you master all of that and you're comfortable with yourself, which is its own lifelong struggle, that's when your work can look as unique as you likely are.
Perfect. Words to end the interview on, Jesse Dittmar. Thank you for doing this. If people want to connect with you, I'll have all your links and all that stuff in the blog post for this episode, of course. But for the folks that want to punch it in right now, what's the best place to start their journey looking at your body of work?
Well, you can take a look at all my work at my website. It's jessedittmar.com. And then you can follow what I'm up to recently and interact with me on Instagram at Jesse Dittmar.
Excellent. And while you're on jessedittmar.com, sign up for the newsletter, because that's how I keep tabs on what you're doing. I'm like, holy crap, this guy just photographed Fauci. What's happening? So yeah, definitely the newsletter is awesome. It's a good way to kind of keep up with your antics running around New York City.
For the Fauci shoot particular on Instagram, I got this post with my lighting diagram and how I explained how I did it and all of the secrets. I'm no stranger in sharing my secrets because they're not really secrets. You know, you have to put the work behind them for them to work. And then even then, you know, like we belabored. But yeah, there's some cool stuff about the Fauci shoot on Instagram already.
All right, my friend, have a good rest of your day. And yeah, I'll be in touch.
It was awesome, Frederick. Thanks for having me again.
This is TWiP.